All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jennifer Amundsen, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us to talk about very important topics to get ready for the summer. Tonight, we are having a third town hall to talk about what our camps will require for returning to in-person programs and camps this summer in regards to COVID-19. And tonight, talk about schedule changes, pool times, and new activity opportunities. And before I get to introducing our speakers on our panel tonight, I want to do my shameless for some upcoming education for you guys. Coming up on March 15th, we're going to have a member-to-member forum room so you guys can meet with one another and talk about what thinking about doing and have a great discussion there. And then March 23rd, I'm real excited to let you know that a friend of mine that I know, Dr. Julie Wolfson from UAB, is going to join us to talk about the outcomes of children with cancer who get COVID-19. She's from UAB in Birmingham, Alabama. So that is going to be a real interesting presentation that she's going to provide. So I hope you can join. And then March 30th, we will have our fourth town hall, and this will be all about virtual camp best practices. So just keep watching for all the educational things we're planning here, probably every Wednesday of the next couple of months. And then the last thing I want to promote tonight is we do have camps that we will be visiting this summer for the Gold Ribbon accreditation. If you're interested in learning about how to be a visitor, if you would, to contact Ryan Campbell, our program manager, and his email is at the bottom. All right, so moving on, I'm real excited to introduce to you tonight three spectacular people who are doing amazing things in their programs. I've got Lee Tiger, who's the program director with Camp Periwinkle in Texas, and Carrie Pomeroy, my friend from Smile a Mile in Birmingham, Emma, who's also the program director, and then Gretchen Luce, our executive director with Kay's Camp out of Delaware. And we're going to move through the questions that were posted on Outside the Box and hear what these three different camps in three different regions of the U.S. are doing. Please make sure you put any questions that you might have in the chat, and Knuckles is going to help monitor that for me. So let's get started. All right, so let's talk about schedule changes. Larry, I'm going to start with you. What did you do last year? I know you had mentioned you did a family camp, and what kind of changes to your schedule did you have? Whether it was meal times or activities, kind of give us an idea of what you did and what kind of things are you thinking about this year?
Yeah, so we weren't able to take, I guess, our traditional camp last year, but we were able to take families out to camp. So we had one family kind of per cabin, and all the families were off treatment. So we had a longer activity time. So typically our activity times are about an hour, and we extended that to like an hour and a half, which gave we didn't have to rush, gave more time for the families to do certain activities, twice, like ropes course or maybe riding horses, or longer time with arts and crafts. And then it also built in time for traveling and cleaning up before like leaving the activity. So it was definitely a much slower pace than what we had originally done, pre-COVID. I think we're gonna use a lot of that same mentality moving forward into the summer. Pre-COVID, our summer camp, we'd do 6 activities a day, plus a rest time, 2 snack periods, and a night activity. And those activity periods were about 50 minutes. I think we're going to extend those, do less activity periods kind of throughout the day, extend that time to give campers enough time to kind of move through travel from one activity to another, have that built-in cleanup time. And I mean, as far as our meal schedules, that didn't change too much. We're very dependent on whatever our host facility, Camp for All, like what their meal schedule is, and they're pretty strict on 8, 12, and 6. Now, we do a pretty good job when we bring out 190 kids out to camp, which in turn, it turns out to about 300 people. We'll stagger cabins. My guess is we'll do some sort of stagger like every, 15, 20 minutes. We haven't gotten that far into planning for this summer. But those are the things that kind of come to mind as far as like schedule changes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Gretchen, what about Case Camp?
So first and foremost, we do not own our site, we lease. So we were at the mercy of our site, whether or not they were willing to host us. We actually have it at one of the local universities, and they were not hosting any outside camps, nor did they host any of their own. So we were kind of forced to do a hybrid program of virtual and in-person. So we did 2 in-person events, and what we did was those were open to whoever wanted to join the in-person events. But one was outdoors, which was one of our lifeguards runs a pool in the summer. So we were actually able to rent out his entire pool for the day. So we kind of did a combination of obviously swimming. And then we did in the back, they have a huge lawn area. So we did a bunch of sports and games out there, obviously keeping everyone in cohorts and keeping everyone socially distanced. All staff, again, had to, pass the different COVID checks that we had up into the day. We also, because we were asking campers to come to the site, we did offer transportation. That was a bit of a nightmare. We thought, oh, we'll offer transportation. It'll be easy. No, it wasn't. And actually, we thought for the most part that our further away campers who are more, we have a couple based down in Maryland. We have a couple based out in New Jersey. Those, of course, were the kids whose parents are like, sure, I'd love to have transportation. We were like, oh, didn't think about that. So that was a bit of a challenge. We ended up, the cheapest version for us was actually renting vehicles and having our volunteer drivers go and pick them up. But, for our other event, which was a dance that we had actually at University of Delaware in their open gym, that became a little bit of a programmatic issue because of the timing of what time did you need to get them, because we only had the gym for a certain amount of time. So we had to figure out what time would be beneficial so that our drivers weren't driving down at 6 a.m. to get them to a 9 o'clock event. That was our time for our pool because we wanted it from 9 to 12 so we could be there before the heat of the day, as well as, to utilize that time. So those were a couple of the things that we did that made a difference for us last year.
Awesome. What kind of adjustments do you think that you guys will have this summer?
Well, University of Delaware is again not hosting any outside camps. So we're going to take the lead from Rich Brundage and crew, and we're going to go try and do a hotel. We have done a parent and kids together conference for a weekend in a hotel, and that was very easy. So actually, we're going to probably take that model and maybe just do a couple more days. So we're going to have a shortened camp week. And we're probably going to do like a long weekend. So maybe like a Thursday to Sunday, or even maybe a Wednesday to Sunday, and try to do as much as we can outdoors. There are, a lot of options for us here in Delaware to do things outdoors. And so we're going to take advantage of that, but that's where we're looking.
Awesome. Carrie?
We really had most of our events were day camps, and then we also did regional activities. We serve patients all across Alabama, so we would go to different parts of the state and do things with them. And most of those were outside. We sort of opted for we're going to go the outside route because that was easier. We did for all of our day camps that we had where parents were dropping their kids off, we did rapid testing. At that time, of course, the variants that were out there were going to respond more to the rapid testing. And so we rapid tested every child that came to any of our camps. All of our volunteers had to be vaccinated, and then we also rapid tested them. So we sort of tried to hit it on the front side. We did have one in-person 3-night camp, our junior senior camp. We felt like it was really important to have them. If a camper came, they had to be vaccinated to spend the night. They could come for day camps, but we tested them every morning when they arrived, which, you know, looking back, maybe that's overkill. You know, it's so hard to know what the right thing to do is. As far as for our camp, as far as changes that we made, we really, again, focused on the front end, trying to make sure that we tested those campers, making sure that they were healthy coming into camp. It was a 3-day camp. We arts and crafts, instead of having it all in one place, we sort of spread it out across the camp so that it could be smaller groups that were working. When they were inside, they had to be masked, of course. Outside, nobody that was there was particularly immunocompromised significantly. So when they were outside, we didn't worry as much about the masking unless we were in a big group. But other than that, the main thing was really spreading those things out. We had tables at different places than we normally do for our meals so that campers could spread out. I noticed, interestingly, that most of the kids sort of went back to the exact same spots with the exact same people every time, which we know kids do anyway, but that was particularly nice. And it wasn't a very big group. I mean, it was a smaller group, and we did that on purpose. Our junior senior group was a smaller group, and it was a hand-picked group. And we knew all of those kids could be vaccinated. And that was a big deal to us. We didn't do some activities like archery is something that we really limited the things that we had out as much so that kids could stay outside and apart and in their smaller groups. And that was very helpful. But again, for us, the big push for us was the testing when they arrived at camp. And I think for this year for camp, and we're still really thinking through things. I think there's still some question marks on the table, but I significantly believe that, again, our focus this year is going to be figuring out we have a pharmacy that we have partnered with. We just actually put on an event, a large gala, and we had everybody that was there had to be vaccinated or be tested, and we partnered with a pharmacy. And that pharmacy has places all across Alabama. And so we think that what we're going to do is try to do rapid PCR tests. We're trying to figure all this out, but because we know that the newer variant doesn't necessarily respond as quickly to the rapid test. So you know, as far as big changes, that's probably our biggest change. We're really focusing on how can we focus on it on the front end, you know, so that we can make as normal of an experience for kids when they're there as we can. So.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you, guys. Okay, so moving on, pool time. I know that just talking with some of our camps that were able to host in-person camp last year, pool time for pods or cohorts was something that some of the camps did. So if you did this last year, how did you maintain your physical distancing and cohorting in the pool? Did you limit capacity of the number of people in the pool? And how did you, if you had lots of pool toys, last year it seemed that we were cleaning everything, and so did you have a cleaning process for pool toys and things like that? And how did you adapt pool time for your campers? Larry?
Yeah, so last year with our family camp, we still went to the pool, and typically at all of our camps, we'd have either with Camp Periwinkle, we'd have 3 sessions in the afternoon where we'd have anywhere from, 7 to 12 cabins like at the pool at one time. or maybe a little fewer than that, but it was definitely a lot of kids over the 3 sessions. And with family camp and our teen camps, it's usually just one session where everybody in that camp will go. So there's a lot of people at the pool. So what we did last year is we spread it out through the schedule. So unfortunately, a couple families, and I think we limited it to 2 or 3 families at a time, but there's a couple families like right after breakfast, they had pool time, or right after lunch, they had pool time. So we kind of split it into the schedule, which I think we'll likely do that again this summer with our camp. So I don't know what Camp for All will require us as far as the number of kids or number of people at the pool at one time, but my guess is we'll have to build that into our daily schedule. So unfortunately, there will be some kids who have to go to the pool right after breakfast, but I think that's one activity most kids will enjoy going to the pool any time of the day. The other thing we did was water day with our families. So it's kind of like a different, you do like a round robin. I think we had like 5 or 6 water type activities. So there's a slip and slide, water wars, obstacle course. And the idea is you're doing all these fun events and you just get drenched in water. I don't recall any cleaning of props or supply, like anything after we were finished with those activities at the pool. I don't think they put out like pool noodles or anything like that, but there is definitely a basketball, because there's a basketball hoop on it, kind of in the not shallow end but not deep end, kind of in the middle of the pool. So we'll likely also do what we call our Olympics Day, which is the same thing, a water day at at camp. I think we'll really have to look at how we spread out the activities and how many, we're not sure how many campers we're going to have this summer, per cabin, probably in the 5 to 7 range, depending on how many kids we have signed up. So we'll really have to like think about how we kind of spread out the activities, and then also some of the activities we may not want to do because it's a lot of like close contact, pouring water. I don't know. So we're not that far into our planning, but my guess is we'll still do something that where the kids can get wet and stuff like that, because they really do enjoy our Olympics Day.
Guess I'm next, if we're keeping up with the schedule there. So the way we had it set up last year is probably going to be similar to what we do this year. Our plan is to, again, look to rent that pool time, from 9 to 12, and use the backdoor space so that we could, depending on the number of campers that show up, when they come up, they get checked out. The way we scheduled it last year, it was on the 3rd day of camp. So the first 2 days were virtual, because we required a 72-hour PCR test prior to that, so that we know those kids that were coming had already had that. So that made it a lot easier during the check-in process. We still corralled them through. We had picnic tables set up for a snack area, but everybody was socially distanced. Those were wiped down and kept clean. When we did things as far as sports and games out back, they all had their own individual items that they used. No one else, it didn't, cross touch. So we bought enough supplies so that everybody had their very own to use during the game. Same thing with the pool toys. And we actually spent more time trying to throw our one nurse's tutu in the water, which it was a personal favorite of mine. And then we did pretty much a jumping contest off of the diving board. So instead of diving in, we did just different we judged it, and staff got involved, but everybody again stayed pretty distanced. So I imagine we'll probably do something along those same lines to mitigate any kind of risk of exposure or anything else like that.
We're pretty lucky because we have a very large pool that we have access to at the camp that we attend. And we, like Gretchen mentioned, because we felt confident about the the status of our campers, we didn't have a lot of those things that we had to do. We did have more pool, inflatables and things for the kids to play with. But honestly, our pool was so large, and with the number of kids we had, we really just that wasn't a concern for us. This year, as our numbers increase and we have more camps, one thing that we will consider is having assigned times that they will be at the pool. For our campers, that will not be something that they're used to, because our campers are able to just sort of go from activity to activity and not have to be on a schedule per se while they're at camp. They kind of can go from thing to thing. So there probably will be more of a true, this is your swim time that you can go for our kids this year, so that we can monitor that a little bit better.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about how this pandemic has been an opportunity to create new traditions. I bet you guys that were able to host camp last summer were able to instill something that will be with you, for a long, long time. And I wanted to see if there were any new activities that you offered last year that worked great that you think might become, a staple within your camp program. Are there any types of activities that you don't recommend running because of COVID and needing to distance or cohort? So tell me about that, Larry.
We did not. Camp for All, they provide a lot of our activities. So for family camp, we didn't do anything new, which was kind of nice because we knew exactly kind of what we were getting, what we're getting into. And most of our activities, we still kind of remained outdoors. Now, I will say this year for Camp Periwinkle, we're looking at bringing some of our virtual activities that were really successful and seeing how we can incorporate those into in-person camp. The Children's Museum of Houston, we partnered with them, and they did like science kits. So each camper got a bag full of whatever the science kit was, and we got a lot of positive feedback through that. And they have a ton of activities that we can pick from. They provide all the supplies, the instructions. So we're thinking we might include something like that. And then some of our night activities, we're not sure. We typically do 2 dances at Periwinkle, and we do a boys' night, girls' night out, and then we do a kind of a younger, older group night activity. And we're not sure what all of our night activities require, like everyone kind of being together, and very hard to like spread out. So we're looking at some some alternate ideas. One popular thing that we did with our virtual camp was like a Jeopardy. So we're thinking about like how do we kind of incorporate that. And virtual camp, probably like most of you, it required us to kind of think outside the box with some of the activities. And it was the first time where we've been charged with coming up with the activities, because for the longest time, Camp for All, that was our resource for, camp activities. So we're going to take a deep dive into what we can pull out, what activities we can pull out from virtual camp. Because in Texas, it gets really, really hot, especially during our camp, which is typically the end of July or the 1st of August, which is typically the hottest in Texas. And we're trying to come up with as many like kind of indoor activities that don't require that a cabin can do on their on their own. So
we really found that our campers liked our version of the Masked Singer, where we did it virtually, but it's really going to be easy for us to do in person. Virtually, we simply played a recording. You recorded yourself. One of the staffers recorded themselves singing whatever song they decided to sing. We tried to keep it, kid centric and something that they would know. Although some of our older staff went with songs that none of us had heard, so that was fun. But it was easy to guess. There's only like 3 really old staff, so But the funny thing was, is then we had them up on the screen and we just had, like the filter where whenever you put let's say it was a mouse for me, and whenever I moved my mouth, you would see it open. So it looked like I was actually singing live, when in actuality, I was singing to a recording. So we're definitely looking to bring that back because the kids thought that was hilarious. They enjoyed trying to guess to see who it was. They were pretty accurate for the most part, but there were a few that we stumped them on. So I know that we definitely want to do that. That's an easy one to do this year. Being in person, the way we'll adapt that is we're going to have some kind of barrier, and everyone will be on their knees, but with a mask on. So there won't be a height difference. You won't be able to see skin color. So really it will be a little bit more difficult for them to kind of guess who it is, but they really did enjoy it. And so did the staff. So I think that's definitely one we're going to do this year that we've done last year.
Like Larry, we found that our kids really responded to the science activities that were in the kits, and we found that there were some kids that maybe aren't campy kids necessarily, but they love that stuff. And so we're talking about ways that we could incorporate some kind of science STEAM activity into what we do at camp. And we've started doing STEAM activities in the hospital as well, taking kits into the hospital for kids. And we've been doing it virtually. So just sort of continuing that STEAM idea. I do think that's something that we will continue. So.
Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about the campers' reception of camp last year for you guys. I'm sure they were very excited to be back at camp. What was the attitude around being there? I've heard some stories, for some kids, it was hard for them to know how to act with the mask on, and then others, it didn't even, faze them one bit. So tell me about their reception of being back at camp with, it looking maybe a little different. And is there anything that, in your communication about, what to expect with camp? So I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. So with family camp last year, we were fortunate enough to all the campers that came, their parents were with them. So I will say that everybody that came, they said it was a breath of fresh air, because for a lot of them, it was the first time that they were able to go out and do something as a family. We did not require vaccines last year. We did require the use of, they had to wear a mask indoors. We still tested everybody prior to everybody arriving. And then we kind of gave them the option to wear their masks, outdoors. We had some families that were very hesitant about coming to camp, very nervous. And by the end of it, families that I thought would kind of keep to themselves the entire time, that was not the case at all. I think they were all looking for that sense of community to, get with other families and talk about their what they've been going through for the past year and a half, 2 years. So I think it was really it was a breath of fresh air for everybody. We didn't have any issues. All the families were very respectful to the other families as far as if, wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, that kind of thing. All the kids were, I would say we had mostly older kids. So they did a really good job of respecting, everyone's boundaries. This year we are requiring, vaccines, which we did get a little bit of pushback from some families, and they understand why we're kind of why we've made that decision. We're also, requiring masks indoors, not, outdoors. And as far as, communicating, it's really like weekly emails that we're doing. 2 weeks before camp, we typically call all of our families. We're just trying to be as open as possible. And then so right now we're planning our teen camp, which will be April 1st through the 3rd. And as we kind of get questions that we get from our teen camp families, we'll kind of adapt those and already put those into our communication for Camp Periwinkle. So we're being a little proactive, with that. But I mean, overall, it's been great, and I hope, I hope you guys have this. I hope you guys have the same. You hear the same thing from the families as it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, our campers were certainly excited to be there. I'm sure like most of our camps, the kids wanted to come up and want to hug, and you want to hug them because you know how special this is that we get the opportunity to spend time with them, and you're just like, maybe a fist bump, maybe an elbow bump, and you want to do more, but you can't. So that was, I think a struggle for everybody, but everybody felt that, and everybody also expressed that and said, man, I really wish I could give you a hug. No, I'm sending you a hug, and oh, can't wait till I can hug you again. Just know you're going to get hugs. And the kids were good. I think it was good for them to be able to be back out somewhat because, especially when for us, we were outdoors with the pool and sports and games. So, they, I think, felt a little bit better about that. I know at the dance, I wasn't able to be at the dance in person. I was online with our virtual campers who couldn't be in person. They look like they were having a wonderful time and really being very thankful. A lot of our parents said that, got back to us with feedback saying, they were so excited to even just do one, in-person activity because, even as of last summer, there weren't many activities that they could do. So, this year we're hoping to do the same, and again, try to do as much as we can outside, but that's also weather permitting, and how do you deal with weather delays or weather, turning severe, or we can't be outside. So there's going to be some challenges, but I know the kids really are pushing for us to be as much as in person as possible. So we kind of feel obligated to do that as much as we can. So.
We were fortunate for our day camps. We have a minor league baseball park that is close to our facility, but it's also pretty central to Birmingham area. And so we were able to have a day camp there. They have a big concourse area. And so we were able to be under that. And that was sort of our first shindig, in addition to seeing families at other events. And they were so happy to be there. We were a little nervous about, testing a 5-year-old child that walks up, but we really had no significant issues at all with any of that. And for our junior senior camp, they were just absolutely thrilled to be there. I would say the only negative for us about junior senior was that the kids that were not vaccinated could not spend the night. And that was hard. That was a hard situation, and it was hard to navigate that and make sure that everybody felt like they were part of the group. But I would say overall, just absolute excitement and happiness. And they just wanted a little bit of normal. I always say they wanted a little bit of normal and a lot of bit of crazy. I just feel like everything right now is so crazy, and nothing. I was previously a school teacher, and these kids have not had a normal in so many years. And for our kids, especially that don't have normal, I think, providing that was so important. And our kids really, it was interesting. They just sort of went back to who they were as campers. They just sort of went back to, these are my people. This is how we function at camp. And because we felt comfortable that they did not have COVID when they arrived, we were able to do that. So.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we've got some good time to answer some questions, and let's go to the chat. I don't know if you saw this spot posted. Has anyone used heedhealthcare.com for testing? He's looking into them right now. If you know anything about that, or maybe you want to put the organization that you're using for testing. I don't know if these are nationwide or local or what, but that might be helpful. Do any of our speakers recognize Heed Health healthcare.com?
No, we're working with it was an Alabama pharmacy, so that wouldn't really apply. I don't know if they're in other places. I will tell you, we did some research into rapid PCR testing kits, and not kits, but machines. And the machines themselves are not that expensive. The actual tests are pretty pricey. And so one thing that we have sort of batted around is having a PCR machine with some tests, not for every camper, for those situations if a camper is sick, so we can test. Because Larry emailed me and asked a great question. How do you decide this year how to send a kid home from camp? Because now COVID is basically, for many people, a bad cold. And, a kid gets a stuffy nose and do you send them home, that kind of thing. So, but we have looked into that, and they're not as expensive as you would think they would be, but I think it would be cost prohibitive to do an entire camp. So.
Yeah, we've looked at that too, about getting our own PCR machine. Luckily for us, my best friend's husband's an ER physician and runs a local 24-hour emergency medical aid center. And so we're going to look to kind of maybe partner with them to see if we can get them to take us on as a philanthropy part to do our rapid testing, PCR testing. That's one of the things that we've looked into. But certainly we also talked about, that it's still cheaper than what our lease would be if we are at even using a hotel. So that money would still be well spent if we felt that that was something we wanted to do, to use for our camp in a shortened week, but that we would want to probably do the PCR testing as much as possible.
For our
My medical
team,
director's on here as well. So if I said anything wrong, Dr. Tricia, feel free to jump in. Sorry.
Nope, you're fine. Everything was perfect as usual, Gretchen.
for our teen camp coming up, so we are requiring a PCR test prior to coming out onto camp. And those tests have to be taken, I guess, within 72 hours. But we are kind of looking into, now we're going to start looking into maybe purchasing a machine, but we're also looking in, I think, to the heat. So I'm glad Spot asked that question. But we just kind of gave out a link to a couple, like the CVS, Walgreens, and I think like 2 other places that are slipping my mind right now. But the other thing too is our camps are all patient siblings. So if the patient's having trouble obtaining a test, then one of our TCH doctors can write a script and they can go ahead and get write orders to get a PCR test done at Texas Children's. And the problem with that is, not all of the siblings are patients or have a medical chart at Texas Children's. So we're kind of working through, some of the stuff. We'll probably kind of go through Camp YOLO as is right now, see what worked well, what didn't work well, and then make changes for our, day camp and Camp Periwinkle.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next question in our chat. Jen with Make a Dream asked, I'm curious about opinions about masking with the recent change in CDC guidance. And, I think we all recognize it could change again before camp actually happens, but are you easing up on your masking plans? I heard some of you kind of comment on that, but Larry, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I mean, we all have opinions, and by we, like everybody at Periwinkle, we have opinions on masking, but it's going to come down to whatever Texas Children's, whatever they tell us to do. And right now it's in wearing a mask indoors. We've been cleared to wear a mask, or not wearing a mask outdoors is fine. But if we need to go indoors, wear a mask unless you're eating or in your cabin with your campers.
Yeah, I mean, our state just changed rapidly. The mandate was supposed to end with masks for indoors for, schools and things, March 31st. And then 2 days ago, they said, oh, by the way, it's changing on March 1st. Congrats. So that's, again, a nice little fun change for those of us educators. So now it's, you can choose to wear it or you don't have to. But I think, for us, going back to with who we have, understanding that, the kids that we may have as far as who's vaccinated, who isn't. Obviously, if they're not vaccinated because of a transplant, we would have to discuss whether that would even, be somebody we would accept this year because of our limitations of being indoors. As far as I know, we haven't changed our mind, but as of the last meeting, we're still going to require people to be wearing masks indoors. And I know that, that again is different from what our state is, but, our plan is to be as transparent as possible with what our expectations are. And yes, that may change again. But as far as right now, we're going to plan to have people wearing masks, staff and campers, to help mitigate those exposures of risk. We were great last year. We did have a couple people that were exposed outside of the camp, in-person events. So it was nothing. And we kept people out of the in-person events. I was one of them. And it was perfect because we didn't have anybody come in and say that they tested positive after being at an in-person event. So we were thrilled with that, with our mitigation strategies. And so I think we want to keep those very similar to what we did. And I think everybody's under the understanding that with our population of medically fragile or medically compromised campers, that's okay. We'd rather be in person with a mask than be virtual again. So
we just have to defer to our medical team at Children's of Alabama. So whatever they say, we will do. And I agree with Larry. I think it's, and with Gretchen, it's ever changing. Today, it could be an answer. I don't think we even know what the answer will be in a month. So right now I don't know the answer because we're still determining that. So.
Okay, moving on, Tanya from Good Times asks, can you guys tell us about your COVID testing process that you used? I'm assuming this is at camp and, who paid for all these tests. Can you kind of run through the process for that?
Yeah, so last year with family camp, Camp for All, they hired a company that came out of Chicago, and everybody that came on site got a PCR and a rapid. So they would do the rapids at camp, and before the family got out of their car, they had to show that rapid test had to be negative. And then the PCR test was sent away, although I've never gotten any of the results. And as far as I know, yeah, everybody tested negative. As far as payment, I guess they had it was either billed through insurance. If a family didn't have insurance, then they, there's, I guess the government paid for it. There's federal funds for that. So I would say we had probably about six or seven families that didn't have health insurance. And as far as I know, they have not received a bill for those COVID tests. This year, Camp for All is not providing that company. So we're looking now to either, partner with somebody, use one of these companies that was mentioned on the chat. But that's kind of all on the families at this moment. So I think that's going to be one of the big challenges of going back to in person, is getting those tests done prior to camp, because we don't have a way to do a rapid PCR at the moment.
So while I can do a lot of things at camp, medical certainly is not my forte, and which is why I only have the best people, at least I think, at camp. So Mary Ellen isn't on this, but Dr. Tricia is. So I'm going to let Dr. Tricia answer what we did, because I was only involved when there would have been issues. So Dr. Tricia, would you mind kind of talking about our PCR tests and our mitigation strategies we did with the COVID-19?
Yeah, sure. So last year we required everyone to get a test within 72 hours of coming to camp. And because we only had 2 in-person activities, they kind of got tested at the beginning of the week and then were able to go to both of those activities. I think this year we will try to also require a PCR test prior to camp. We're trying to decide whether we can get that on site as people show up or whether they need to go get it on their own. We found that it was a little bit difficult to get people to reply to us with their proof of COVID test. So, and last summer there was also delays in testing. So we had a lot of people waiting for their results and like packed and ready to come for the day. And we didn't know if they were COVID positive or negative. So that's the benefit of testing, you know, on site if we can do that. And then if we do a longer period of in-person camp this year, we were thinking about trying to do rapid tests at 1 or 2 points during our week to make sure that everyone who comes to camp with a negative PCR stays negative while they're there.
See, told you people. Simple, quick and easy. That's my girl.
We had to get our CLIA certification in order to test campers ourselves. So we got that certification. We used Binax Now test, but they were about $5 a patient. We tested them. We did have medical staff that were on site that would help with that process as well. This year, if we do the PCR test, we more than likely would pair with the pharmacy that I mentioned earlier, and they have the ability, or they, when we used them recently, for parents to sign a waiver so that we would get that information immediately, so that they wouldn't even have to go through another source. It would come straight to us. So, but we do have our CLIA certification. So if we do get a PCR, if we do get a rapid PCR testing machine, we are able to do that as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I see also Susie Burke from Camp One Step used Heed Healthcare last year. You can also email her. Her email's in the chat. Another great resource for you. And there's another question. Did you just require campers to show a negative test printout, or did all the test results go into a spreadsheet that you could see?
They either had to print it out and give it to us or email us their test results. Camp for All required copies of the negative test results. So it'll likely be that way this year again.
Dr. Tricia.
Sorry, I'm muted. We did the exact same thing. Either we'll preferably email your test results to our medical coordinator ahead of camp so we could keep our own spreadsheet and know who still needed their tests to be submitted.
We kept a record of that documentation as well. And if we do the pharmacy testing with PCR, we would ask them to send it to us or to sign a waiver so that we could get access to that information.
Okay, great. Next comment. So Make a Dream, most of you may not know this, but they have campers come from all over the country to participate in their camp programs, and they are planning on having them do a test prior to travel, but then they are have just started conversations with their local health department about testing on arrival day at the airport. They seemed very willing to assist. Your local health departments might be another avenue to check out. Great idea, Jen. Are there any other questions or comments from our speakers? Anything you thought of you would like to share? Anything else?
I mean, I think obviously all three of us are willing to be on tonight, so don't hesitate to reach out to myself, or, you know, I'm speaking for Larry and Carrie, but I'm sure they'd be fine with you reaching out if you guys have questions. Again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, and that's the great thing about COCA is somebody's already probably gone through it or done it just like you. So don't hesitate to email or reach out. And if you're not sure, remember our information. You can always go to Jennifer or Ryan. They're a good source of information too, and can kind of farm out the questions as necessary.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions? Quiet bunch tonight. Guys, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate Carrie and Larry for being our panel speakers. Wish everybody the best of luck as you're about your activities and programs this summer. And thanks for being on this call tonight.
Thanks, gang. Thanks